At Christmas dinner, my sister smiled and said, "We voted, and you're not family anymore." Applause filled the room. I laughed softly and replied, "Then I guess you won't need this." I set a folder down. The second she opened it, she lost it. Christmas dinner was supposed to be a time for family, laughter, and warmth. At least that's what I used to believe. This year, the air felt different, heavier, like a storm waiting to break. I should have known something was coming when Natalie, my sister, kept throwing glances around the table, her expression smug. Then, right as the meal reached its peak, she stood up, tapped her glass, and with a wide grin, said, "We've made a decision as a family. You're no longer welcome here." For a moment, I thought I misheard her. But then, to my absolute shock, the room erupted in cheers. My parents, my aunts, even my cousins, they all looked at me like this was some great achievement, like kicking me out was something to celebrate. The worst part? No one even hesitated. No one looked conflicted. My mother smiled as if Natalie had just announced a pregnancy. My father nodded in approval. That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was planned. I should have felt angry, devastated, anything. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching them, letting it all sink in. Because deep down, I had already expected this. I had seen the signs, the way I was treated like an afterthought for years. I wasn't one of them. I never had been. And this was just the final confirmation. Natalie crossed her arms, waiting for my reaction. She wanted tears, an outburst, maybe even begging. I could see the anticipation in her eyes, like she was about to win some twisted game. But instead, I smiled. And that smile? It made her falter for just a second. I reached under my chair, pulled out a folder, and placed it on the table with a soft thud. The sound cut through the laughter, turning a few heads. I leaned back, exhaling slowly, and said, "Then I guess you won't be needing this." The room quieted just enough for my words to settle. Natalie's expression twisted with confusion as she grabbed the folder, flipping it open with all the confidence in the world. But the second her eyes scanned the first page, all the color drained from her face. And then, she screamed. Natalie's scream shattered the air, silencing the entire room. It wasn't just a gasp or a startled cry. It was pure, panic terror. Her hands trembled as she gripped the folder, her eyes darting across the pages like she was searching for a way out. Whatever confidence she had just moments ago was gone. My parents, who had been so eager to cheer her on, now looked at her with confusion. "What is this?" my father asked, his voice suddenly wary. Her husband, Joel, reached for the folder, prying it from her stiff fingers. As he read, his face darkened. "Natalie," he muttered, barely above a whisper. His hands clenched the pages so tightly I thought he might tear them apart. He swallowed hard, then turned to look at her, really look at her. And for the first time, there was no admiration in his eyes, just disbelief, maybe even disgust. "What the hell is this?" Joel demanded, holding the papers up for the family to see. My mother leaned forward, peering over his shoulder, and suddenly, her face went pale too. My aunt gasped. My cousins exchanged nervous glances. One by one, they all realized that whatever was in that folder wasn't just bad, it was damning. The room, once filled with laughter and celebration, had turned into a vacuum of silence. Natalie tried to speak, but all that came out was a choked sound. I watched as she struggled, her mouth opening and closing, but no words would form. For years, she had always been the one in control, the golden child who could do no wrong. But now she was trapped, exposed in a way she never thought possible. And she knew it. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the table. "You wanted me out so badly," I said calmly. "But I wonder, now that everyone knows the truth, who's really going to be left standing?" Natalie's breath hitched, and in that moment, I saw something I had never seen in her before. Not cruelty, not arrogance, just fear. Real, desperate fear. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one powerless in this family. That fear in Natalie's eyes, I had lived with it my whole life. Not in her, of course, in myself. Because this moment, this betrayal, didn't happen overnight. It was built over years, brick by brick, through every ignored plea, every unfair punishment. Every time I was made to feel like an outsider in my own home. I wasn't surprised they had finally decided to get rid of me. The real surprise was that they thought I wouldn't be ready for it. Natalie was always the golden child. She could do no wrong, no matter what she did. If she failed a test, it was the teacher's fault. If she broke something, someone else must have left it in her way. And if I so much as breathed the wrong way, I was the problem. I was blamed, dismissed, used when convenient, then forgotten. They expected me to play along, to accept my role as the family's scapegoat. But what they didn't know was that I had been paying attention. Every cruel remark, every time I was thrown under the bus. I remembered it all. And over the years, I started collecting proof. Quietly, patiently, I documented everything. The lies, the manipulation, the things they thought would stay hidden. They had spent years assuming I was weak, that I would always just take it. But they never once considered that I might fight back. Natalie's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. She must have recognized some of it, the messages, the financial records, the signed statements. Maybe she even remembered sending some of those emails herself. But now, seeing it all laid out in black and white, she finally understood what I had known for a long time. This family wasn't invincible, and her place at the top, it was built on nothing but illusions. Joel rubbed his temple, his face twisted in anger and frustration. My parents still hadn't spoken, but my mother's hands were clasped so tightly together that her knuckles had turned white. They were processing it, trying to make sense of how the child they had always cast aside had suddenly flipped the script. I took a sip of my drink, savoring the silence. This wasn't just about getting back at them. It was about finally making them see the truth. And from the looks on their faces, I knew, whether they admitted it or not, they saw it now. Natalie gripped the folder so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She looked around as if searching for someone, anyone, to step in and fix this for her. But no one did. The same family that had cheered moments ago was now frozen, their faces shifting from amusement to unease. My mother, who had laughed at my supposed downfall, now looked like she was struggling to breathe. My father, who always stood by Natalie's side, suddenly avoided her gaze. Joel flipped through the documents again, his expression darkening with every page. "You lied to me," he muttered under his breath. But in the dead silence of the room, everyone heard it. He turned to Natalie, his jaw clenched. "All these years you let me believe." He stopped himself, exhaling sharply before looking at me. And for the first time ever, there wasn't contempt in his eyes. There was something else. Maybe regret, maybe guilt. Natalie shook her head rapidly. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered. But even she didn't sound convinced. She turned to my parents, desperate. "Say something. This is ridiculous." But they didn't. My father stared at the table. My mother's mouth opened and closed like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. The power had shifted, and everyone in the room felt it. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "You thought you had control over me," I said, my voice calm. "That I'd always be the one left standing in the cold while you all sat by the fire. But tell me, Natalie, who's freezing now?" Her breath hitched. I could see the weight of those words settling over her, pressing down, suffocating. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. No one moved. No one knew what to say. The once lively Christmas dinner had turned into a funeral. Only this time, the person being buried wasn't me. It was the illusion they had spent years building. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need their validation, their approval, their love. I had spent years chasing something that was never real. But now I was done. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. The room was still frozen, everyone trapped in the mess they had created. I let my eyes drift across the table, taking in the stunned faces, the tension thick enough to choke on. Natalie still clutched the folder, but her hands were shaking. Joel had pushed his chair back, staring at her like she was a stranger. My parents? They looked smaller than I had ever seen them, weak, silent. I turned to Natalie, my voice steady. "You wanted me gone," I said. "You worked so hard to make sure I was the outcast, the problem. But now, I don't think I'm the one who's about to be left behind." I let that sink in, watching as her face twisted with the realization. She had spent her whole life making sure she was on top, untouchable. And now she was the one with everything to lose. No one spoke. No one tried to stop me as I grabbed my coat. The power shift was complete, and they all felt it. For years, they had made me feel like I needed them, like I was nothing without their approval. But standing there, watching them crumble under the weight of their own choices, I knew the truth. I had never needed them. They needed me to blame, to control, to use. And now that was over. I walked to the door, pausing only once to glance back. "Merry Christmas," I said, my voice light, almost amused. It was the first time I had ever meant those words in this house, because for the first time, Christmas was truly mine. It belonged to me, not them. The cold air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it didn't bother me. I breathed it in, letting it fill my lungs. For the first time in my life, I wasn't leaving in defeat. I wasn't running. I was free. And as I walked away from the house, from them, from the past, I smiled, because I knew I was never coming back.